2 in the pit lane, 18 on the grid, the green flag at the back. And here come the lights for the start of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
So we'll come to Ferrari in just a moment because Leclerc, of course, had pole position. But first things first, Sergio Perez was in second. He overtook Leclerc after Verstappen. Verstappen had a chance to make a breakaway. And there are two things at play, really, and why Checo managed to come out in front. Firstly is the fact that he's actually just reeling in Max. He's quicker than Max on these medium tyres. He's looked after them a little bit better. Verstappen was quite aggressive trying to pass Leclerc for a while without DRS for a few laps, then managed to get closer and eventually with DRS blasted past. But he hurt the tyres a lot more than Perez. So Perez has gone from 1 second back when he passed Leclerc, then 8 tenths, then 6 tenths, and now he is right on the tail of Max. The second thing in play is, of course, the safety car. And now you can see De Vries has hit the wall. He's stopped his car here. Not immediately obvious what's going on, but there are double waved yellows there. So any driver on the circuit has to back off considerably through this section. And you know there's a risk of a safety car, particularly on a street circuit like this. The walls are close. Any chance for the marshals can clear this car is going to be by basically going onto the track. So if De Vries cannot get going, there will be a safety car. Meanwhile, we flick back to the lead and you've got Perez now hunting down Verstappen. He's going to pick up the DRS. He's going to have a chance to pass. But Red Bull used this moment to pit Max. And without the safety car, that would be a sensible move. Verstappen's tyres were gone. He was going to be under bigger threat from Checo behind as well. But with the safety car, it obviously proved a catastrophic decision for Max's chance to win the race. So without the safety car, he would have had the fresh hard tyres. They would have gone to the end as we saw them do eventually, and probably would have kept track position and won the race. With the safety car, there's a chance he wouldn't have won anyway if he didn't pit, because we're on board with Checo. He's going to pick up the DRS here. And if he doesn't make the move on Max, if Max pits now, which he does, he loses the race. If Max, the alternative is to stay out, he may well lose the race because Checo is just that good at this stage in the Grand Prix on the medium tyres. He picks up the DRS. You can hear the overspeed as he gets it. And he may well actually just fancy a run at Max on the circuit. Red Bull v Red Bull. Shame, it would have been a thriller to watch those two play it out on circuit. But I think there's a chance that Checo would have won out just because Max had hurt those medium tyres. The De Vries crash is what really caused the safety car and caused that conundrum, which either way, probably Max would have lost out on. But I do think it's a mistake from Red Bull. And we can see here, side by side with De Vries and Verstappen, why I think they shouldn't have called Verstappen in. I think they had enough time, basically, to realise what was happening. De Vries hits the wall at turn 6. Can't turn the car into the right-hand side. He's broken the suspension there, and he's off the track. The Red Bulls are only in turn 15. There's a 2-kilometre straight at the end of turn 16, which they're coming to now. And De Vries, you can see that his suspension is bent. It's not immediately obvious from the outside what's going on, but he is stationary for a long time. Now he's reversing, and he cannot move that car. In fact, he's now turned the car off at this point, and now there is a guaranteed safety car with De Vries turning the car off. It was likely before. It was certainly a big chance when you got a car stopped in an awkward position. And the way that he had stopped as well, you'd think it's not going to be just a driver incident in turn 6. It's maybe come from 5, and that's a problem with the car. And it was a problem with the car caused by the driver incident, but that's another thing. Either way, you don't end up there if you can easily reverse it back and carry on. So Red Bull pitted. The prudent thing to do in this situation would have been to stay out one more lap just in case there's a safety car. And as we jump on board with Max looking forward here, you can see De Vries is now going to jump out. His race is done. And Max comes in for what should be a routine stop from the lead, puts on the fresh tyres, won't be overcut by Perez until we get the safety car. Max leaves the pits on the hard tyres. Here we go. De Vries, his compatriot, jumping out of the car. Guaranteed safety car, and Max is still in the pit, so he's taking a huge loss from this. And as we come out of the pits on board with Max, there you can see flashing panel. That is the sign of a safety car, which means that everyone else can pit and save 10 seconds, or just about 10 seconds, by pitting, when Max now on this lap has to go really slow. He's pitted with everyone else at racing speed, and that is why he came out actually in 3rd place behind Leclerc. And in the end, that is what gave Sergio Perez the race win. But as I said before, maybe even if Max had stayed out, Checo would pass him on track. It would have to be on the next lap, of course, because the safety car was called. Would have neutralised it otherwise.
The The Street Fighter's done it again. Sergio Perez wins in Azerbaijan to take his 6th career victory for the first time this season. Ferrari on the podium with Charles Leclerc.
And what about Ferrari then? Well, Leclerc was on pole, but we saw in the sprint how he was passed by Perez and couldn't cling on and actually dropped back pretty heavily with tyre wear. This is the data, the telemetry from Leclerc in qualifying. Leclerc in the red, Verstappen in the blue, Sainz in the green. Now, it looks like a bit of a mess of squiggly lines, but there are a few things to point out here. Firstly, the brake pressures that we have. Leclerc's stamping on the brakes. The red line really peaks up a lot higher than both Sainz and Verstappen here, so he's really comfortable on the brakes. And he's able to carry speed, good speed, into the corners in the middle sector, particularly here, the castle section, where he's able to take a good gain of minimum speed as well, rolling off the brakes, having hit them hard, and at turn 15. So the middle sector, he's making a big difference, mostly on the brakes, also on minimum speed. And this is something that Carlos just couldn't replicate through the weekend. There was a big gap between Leclerc's pace and Sainz. You can see on this lap here, it's 8 tenths, which is how they qualified. And Leclerc had the pole position. Was it just that Leclerc's ballistic around this circuit? 3 poles in a row. He took pole in 2021 when the Ferrari wasn't even particularly good. He loves Baku. And I think there's an element of the Ferrari increase in pace. It's down to Leclerc's brilliance behind the wheel. When you look at the 8-tenth gap, Sainz wasn't able to do the same as Charles through one lap, not even in race pace either, really. He was mystified at his lack of pace. So Ferrari, I'm sure, have taken a step forward. And generally, they seemed happier, certainly on Charles' side of the garage, with the pace of the car. But I do think also this was a Leclerc special track, and he really could deliver it on one lap. And for me, still, he's probably the best qualifier out there. When you give him a sniff, he delivered it in not only qualifying, but the sprint shootout. This is the problem, though, it's the race pace. And this is the trace, then, of Leclerc v Perez through the Grand Prix. Interestingly, towards the end, this part, the last dozen laps or so, there's not a huge amount to separate the Ferrari and the Red Bull. And the day before, Leclerc was drifting back at second plus per lap of the sprint. He'd really gone through his tyres. And the reason that he's able to hang on, and they're actually trading fastest laps, Alonso was there in the Aston Martin as well, on par with the Red Bull at the end. The reason they were doing that is because this was the fight here, where you got Perez a second a lap quicker than Leclerc in these early stages. They both managed to pass Leclerc, the 2 Red Bulls, and then they're trading blows with each other. It was fantastic to see Perez and Verstappen hustling on as they were, both clipping the wall at various times at turn 15. And they were pushing each other so hard, building such a lead over the Ferrari. And Leclerc in this early stage was managing the tyres a lot. So he was accepting defeat with the Red Bulls. He was thinking, I want to take the podium here, I want to stay ahead of Alonso. So was driving quite well within himself. And you can see that by the way that actually Leclerc's pace gets quicker towards the end of the Grand Prix than it is around this phase here. So Leclerc was managing, didn't do that in the sprint and paid a price, did do that in the Grand Prix, paid the price early, but had the tyre life at the end to cling on for a podium. Ultimately, Ferrari don't have the race pace still. If he pushes as hard as the Red Bulls, he'll chew those tyres and he probably wouldn't have held on for even a podium.
And P3?
Well, I think there wasn't anything more. Again, for this race, we maximized absolutely everything. Yeah, thank you guys, and finally we have a race without too much trouble.